Very good evening to all of you. Happy Navratri. So, welcome again to this Sector Spotlight series organized by our firm Gabhawalla and Company. This is the sixth session that we are having. Also, we would like to highlight that this is our third webinar that we are conducting in the last 30 days. So, happy to have everybody again together for this important session of e-way bill in GST. Before I really deep dive into the session today, what I would like to just highlight is what is going to be the flow, what is going to be the topics that we will cover. So first, I will be taking up the provisions. We will run through them. Thereafter, we will discuss some of the important circulars and court decisions that have come with regards to e-way bill. Thereafter, I will share some of the recent updates which have also come in. Thereafter, in the second part, in the later half, what I will be doing is I will be taking up certain aspects of e-way bill and how they are relevant, how they are important now, moving forward, and even how they have been important for the past 3, 4, 5 years since it has been introduced. Without wasting much time, let us directly jump into today's session. So, let us start with the very basic. What is an e-way bill? E-way bill is basically your document which, after putting the necessary information on the government portal, they give you a output, this e-way bill, wherein this e-way bill documents the movement of goods from location A to location B, and this e-way bill has the details of who is sending the goods, who is going to receive the goods, from which state the goods are going to go, where is the goods going to finally land up. So covering all of these critical aspects is what an e-way bill is. So the first basic provision here we are going to discuss is the rule 138.1, which talks about when do you generate. So what is the basic criteria? So it says consignment value exceeding 50,000 for a supply or a non-supply movement or inward supply from an unregistered person. So if in case there are any of these three conditions, any one of these three conditions are there, you are required to generate e-way bill with a specific threshold of 50,000 rupees. It is important to note right now two things. First, this value 50,000 is basically your gross value, which taxable plus tax. Secondly, this is the general rule. However, there are certain states who have defined a different limit for their intrastate within the state movements. So basically, if it is an interstate from point A to point B crossing the boundary of one or more states, then the limit will be 50,000 rupees. However, in some cases such as Maharashtra, for example, the limit is 1 lakh rupees for intrastate within the state. Now it must as a organization, it must be important for you to set a standard operating procedure rather than having a limit of 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees on state to state basis. You can have a standard limit of 50,000 if you are a multi-state entity. Some states who are present only in one particular state and where they know that the limit of intrastate is rupees 1 lakh, there they can opt for this. But otherwise, as a precautionary or a cautionary measure, I would suggest that 50,000 should be the limit that we must all keep in mind. Second, it is important that this e-way bill has to be generated before the movement starts and not once the motor vehicle has left your premises. Okay, so it is important that it must be generated before the goods commence the movement. And also it is important that in case of job work and some handicraft goods, e-way bill is mandatory irrespective of the value of goods. And also it is important to note that primarily e-way bill is for transportation of goods, but in many cases there are multiple modes of transport which also happen, such as railways, sometimes air, sometimes by vessel as well. So there are different compliances that needs to be done or tweak in the e-way bill, but for those movement also within India, e-way bill is a must. Also, lastly, in this 138 rule, what the government has also specified is that if you're transporting goods via railways, the railways are instructed not to deliver the goods at the destination unless you present a valid e-way bill at the time of delivery. So please make sure that even if your goods are moving through railways, e-way bill is mandatory. Next we move on to is the generation process, e-way bill generation process. So here it is important that we must understand that e-way bill is divided into two parts, part A and part B. Only when both these details are completely filled, accurately filled, a e-way bill is said to be complete and an e-way bill will be generated by the government website. Here it is important that part A relates to the basic information which the person who is responsible to move the goods he will have. So the basic idea such as the GST of the recipient, supplier, where it is going, from where it is going, invoice details or what is the document on the basis of which movement is happening, the value, the HSN code of those goods, and why it is being transported. All of these basic details form part A of your e-way bill. Part B is very critical. Without part B, part A in itself has some critical details, but that alone do not mean that a e-way bill is complete. Part B has critical information with respect to your mode of transportation, air, sea, vessel, road. If you select road, then you give the following details such as what is the vehicle number, what is the transportation document, or you can give transporter ID. Okay, so basically what the option is given is that if you don't know in which vehicle the goods will move, you can opt to give the transporter ID, so that this details of e-way bill will then shift to the transporter's ID. Once he knows that okay, I am going to send these goods of this party in this vehicle, he will update the vehicle number and finally generate the e-way bill. Okay, so that is where the transporter details become important. So even if you don't know which vehicle you are going to move the goods in, you can fill up the transporter detail and transporter shall update the part B with respect to the vehicle number before starting the movement of the goods. I hope straight simple. I know this is a very basic explanation and maybe most of you all have been doing it for this past 5 years, but I thought let me just give a basic idea and now then we'll go ahead a little quicker. Okay, so what are the other rules after these basic rules? So the first one is that the government has specified that if your goods are moving from your premise to the transporter's premise within a distance of 50 kilometers and in the same state or union territory, then you need not fill part B. Part B can be filled after the goods reach the place of business of the transporter and he can update and take it forward. Similarly, also what the corollary exemption or relaxation that has been given is that once the goods reach the destination, from their transporter's place of business to consignee's place of premise, if they are within 50 kilometers and in the same state, then again that part B need not be updated to that extent. The government also gives an option that in case anything happens to the vehicle in which the goods were being transported, you have an option to update the conveyance details. Say, for example, the car breaks down. So in those cases, you can opt to change the vehicle number. So if the goods are being shifted from the original vehicle to another vehicle, in that case, that updating facility is important and must be used, so that in the last leg of that transportation there is no problem, or there should not be any hiccup with respect to any officer who catches the motor vehicle but finds that the number is not updated. The portal also gives an option that if you have already assigned the transaction to a particular transporter to his transport ID, sorry, that transporter can again transfer it to another by assigning that particular e-way bill, but that is allowed only once. And lastly, once the final e-way bill is already generated, you cannot cancel after 24 hours, especially if the movement has not started. So e-way bill generated, movement not started, you can cancel within the first 24 hours only. And lastly, where part A is filled, that data will be valid available on the portal for 15 days for part B to be updated. Thereafter, it will be deleted and it will not be available on the portal. So once an e-way bill is generated, what is the validity? That is provided in Rule 138.10, which says that if it is a normal cargo, for first 200 kilometers, it will be 1 day, and thereafter for every 200 kilometers, it will be 1 additional day. So for example, if the total distance is, say, for example, 480 kilometers, so in that case, the validity would be 3 days. In case of over-dimensional cargos or multimodal shipments where at least one leg is involved by vessel or a ship, in that case, that limit of validity shifts from 200 to 20 kilometers. So for every 20 kilometers, you will have one day. So again, if the distance is, say, for example, 68 kilometers, so in that case, the validity would be 4 days. Here, the government has specified that only in exceptional circumstances, this validity of e-way bill can be extended, and that also specifically it says that in the last 8 hours before its expiry, you can update. Say, for example, there is a political rally, something like what happened in Mumbai last month, or there is a vehicle breakdown. In that case, if the e-way bill is going to expire before, once you know the time of expiry, in the last 8 hours, you can extend the validity by giving reasons and specifying these specific exceptional circumstances. Then there is another important concept of deemed acceptance. So what does the rule specify? So it says that details of e-way bill will be available to the counterparty once part A is updated. Thereafter, what it says is that the counterparty, so for example, as a supplier, once I have updated the details, these details will flow to the transporter and the recipient whose GSTN I have used. They will then get an option to either accept or reject the consignment which I as a supplier have pushed on the e-way bill portal. That is what Rule 138.11 says. As per Rule 138.12, the counterparty, that is my recipient, has a time of 72 hours to accept or reject, and if no action is taken within that period, it will automatically be treated as deemed accepted. The transaction will be deemed to be accepted. Please note, we will discuss this deemed acceptance part again in the later stages. So we will park we have understood the concept of deemed acceptance, but how it is relevant and what it is, we'll take it up in the latter half of this session. So there are certain, so as you all know, wherever there is a provision, there will be some exemptions, there will be some relaxations. So here, say for example, if the goods are moving in the non-motorized vehicle, non-motorized conveyance. So for example, if I have to deliver something, say, which is just 2 lanes away, and I have appointed somebody who's using a hand cart. So in that case, e-way bill is not required, irrespective of the monetary value, because the movement will happen in a non-motorized conveyance. Secondly, transit cargoes to and from Nepal and Bhutan, they don't require e-way bill. If your vehicle is going to a weighbridge to measure the weight which is within that 20 kilometers from that premise, then again for that movement e-way bill is not required. Movement of empty containers or movement within the custom bonded warehouse, again that is that do not require e-way bill. With respect to goods, if the goods being transported are exempted or they are part of schedule 3, then again e-way bill provisions are not mandatory. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption, petrol, diesel, all of these items are again out of GST. So again, e-way bill provisions are not mandatory for these items as well. LPG for household, gold, silver articles, except imitation jewelries, your currency, personal and household effects, those also do not require e-way bill. Now, with vis-a-vis a transporter, what are the documents he's mandatorily required to be carrying with himself when he is transporting goods? First and foremost, e-way bill obviously, but what is the supporting document basis which the movement is happening? It could be an invoice, it could be a bill of supply, it could be a delivery challan, or in case of import transactions, it can be a bill of entry. So all of that must be carried along with the e-way bill mandatorily. The government says that the rule says that there is a relaxation that if e-invoice is generated, the copy of invoice is not required. QR code with the IRN embedded is also enough. And in some cases, they are saying that if e-way bill number in electronic form or mapped to the RFID tag of the vehicle, that is also fine. But we all know, we all understand that it is always better that all of these details are carried along by the driver in physical or a hard copy. Everyone's technological literacy cannot be relied upon. So with that background, as a cautionary tale, it is always better to go ahead with the physical copies itself. Okay, now since we discussed with respect to what the documents that the truck driver, the vehicle person who is in charge of the vehicle has to carry, we now move on to the fact that once the movement has started and if there is an inspection or a verification that happens, what is the process that is involved in that case? So in case a vehicle is asked to intercepted by an authority, in that case only a authorized officer or a commissioner himself can intercept vehicle for document verification. Also, it is important that once they intercept the vehicle, they have to prepare a physical verification report within the first 24 hours, and only in exceptional cases they can extend that to 3 days. And also what this rule 138B and 138C states that once a vehicle is intercepted and verified, for that same movement there cannot be another re-verification again unless some specific tax evasion information is made available. Okay, now let us deep dive further into this. What exactly happens during this process of inspection or verification? So basically, the officer, he will issue GST MOV1 and MOV2, wherein he will give a detailed inspection order that I have stopped this vehicle, this is the driver, he is from this place, this is his age, person who is in charge of the vehicle, he will be identified. The inspector or the person who has intercepted the vehicle, he will then issue a order that I want to inspect your vehicle. You please give me that permission. Obviously, they are kind enough to mention that way, but we all know that how it exactly happens. So GST MOV1 and MOV2 is given at that point in time. In case, as we just discussed, that if they want to extend that time of inspection to 3 days, then he will issue a MOV3. But in most cases, we have found that they immediately do it. Also, in some, after inspecting, what is his finding? That will be available in physical verification report in GST MOV4, which is issued. And if after verification, if everything is matching, for example, the address in the invoice and e-way bill, the PIN code details, the GST details, the addresses, the goods that he was carrying, quantity, HSN, all of these details are in order, then he will issue a release order in GST MOV05. If not, then he will issue a detention order stating that, okay, for this reason, I do not find that the e-way bill provisions are complied, and that is why I am detaining this vehicle along with the goods in it. So if that will be issued in GST MOV06, and immediately he will also issue a show cause notice in MOV07, wherein he will demand what is the penalty due under Rule 138. So all of this happens generally very quickly within 1 day. So he will, from GST MOV1 to MOV7, all the applicable forms are generally issued together if there is a discrepancy that is observed. Thereafter, you are expected to file your replies within the specific period. Generally, it is 3 days, 5 days, because the vehicle is already on the road. Once you have given your reply, he will either again release it or he will confirm it. He will issue a final order. Thereafter, if there, in this entire process, if he feels that he has to go further and go further than mere detention and he has to confiscate, then that will happen in GST MOV10, where he will issue a show cause notice for that. And thereafter, after considering your reply and giving you opportunity of hearing, he may choose to issue a final confiscation order in MOV11. Okay, so this is how it generally happens. And what they generally do is, if you have an existing ID, they will upload all these details on that ID. If you are caught in a third state, say for example, the goods are moving from Delhi to Bihar and UP happens to be in between, and if this interception happens in UP, they might also issue you a specific user ID, which they will generate on the spot for you to comply with this show cause notice. So different states have different practices. Some states do call up and issue the show cause notice in your GSTN itself, and in some cases we have seen that they generate a temporary ID on the GST portal on which all of these issues are reported, and they then ask you to reply and on that specific temporary ID itself. Okay, so what are the penalties now? Since we are discussing e-way bill compliances, interception, what if there is actually something wrong? So Section 129 deals with detention, which specifically states that Section 129 should be invoked when there is substantial violation, such as non-issuance of invoice or e-way bill, or goods are moving but tax evasion is detected or implied. So in those cases, detention will be done under Section 129, and the penalty that can be levied is 200% of the tax payable on the owner of the goods. Okay, so generally they have given multiple penalty schemes. depending on whether the owner of the goods comes forward or does not come forward. But in most cases, since the owner of the goods will always come forward, we have just taken those scenarios too for this purpose. Now, something more serious, confiscation. They will take away your vehicle along with the goods. And when so if that case arises, when does this case arise? So basically they have information, or they believe that the supply that is happening is unaccounted, nobody knows, or supply happens without registration, if e-way bills are not generated. In those cases, they can go one step higher than the detention, and they can actually confiscate the goods as well as the conveyance, and penalty can be as high as the tax evaded, along with the fact that the confiscation of goods and conveyance that happens, for that there is no specific penalty that is provided. So that is as per basic whims and fancies of the officer in most cases. And lastly, if there are some minor procedural, typographical, or some numerical mistakes that happen, for those cases where all other details in the documents are perfect, matching, and the law is complied, in those cases, such as for example, the vehicle number was 1234, but erroneously it was written as 2134. So there is a typographical error of 1 or 2 digits. The pin code was 4000018, but by mistakenly it is entered as 4000015. So some typographical mistakes like this, or spelling mistakes, only those are covered in this minor procedural lapse, and the penalty is restricted to 1000 rupees. Now, since we are talking about the portal and the compliances and what happens in case there is something wrong, so the government, in order to ensure that only the compliant ones are generating e-way bills, so what they have done here is they have said that if as a quarterly taxpayer you are not filing returns for 2 quarters, or as a normal taxpayer you have not filed returns for 2 months, then in those cases part A of e-way bill shall be blocked for you. You cannot generate e-way bill on your own. Or if your GST registration is suspended, in those cases also e-way bill generation will not be permitted. In case if during that period of non-filing of returns or suspension you still want to generate e-way bill, then you may have to apply to the commissioner, and case to case basis, based after giving you opportunity of personal hearing and reasons recorded, they may either allow you or again not allow you for generation of e-way bills. Speaking about the portal, e-way bill portal, here, as we all know, there is this one feature, sub-user creation, which I feel that not many are using it, not many are aware of it. So, since 5-6 years have already been since the provisions of e-way bill have been introduced, this one feature or this one aspect of that portal is still untapped. So, what the e-way bill portal allows you to do is that you can have a separate login ID where each sub-user can log in using his own specific login ID, and he can create the e-way bills. Here, he will be given specific rights. So, for example, if you want to give him rights only for e-way bill generation, then for other rights such as generating consolidated e-way bill or rejecting e-way bill or generating reports, you can specifically give permission or deny permission for all of these categories. Also, separate mobile number is required for each such sub-user, which will also help in two-factor authentication. So basically, if you have 5 or 10 go downs, you can actually create sub-user for each go down, and for that particular office, so that they can generate e-way bill for movement that happens from that particular office only. And that user can have specific rights, whether generate, not generate, reject, whether generate reports or not. So this one feature I feel is something that can be looked upon by organizations depending on their businesses. Moving on, I would like to just touch upon a few key circulars that have been issued in the e-way bill, this entire setup. So first, the first set of circulars are regarding this inspection, detention and penalty provisions. So circular 41 by 15 of 2018 is like your master circular, that when road checks happen, when interception happens, what is the procedure that the officers have to follow? That is prescribed in this circular. Circular 49 by 23 of 2018, 2 months later issued in June 2018. That also specifies, along with illustrations, when detention or confiscation has to happen and under what statutory provisions that all activities that the officer undertakes should happen. Thereafter, interestingly, within the first 6 months of introduction of e-way bill, the government had to come up with a circular which clarified that in case of minor clerical errors, what is the penalty that should be levied. And the reason is because in the first 4-5 months, the government noticed, because obviously the people who would have done such small mistake would have raised their voices, because the officers were acting very strict. Even for the small mistakes of spelling mistakes or the typographical errors that we discussed, they were charging the entire penalty that was applicable at that point in time. So people were actually, they raised their concerns that for a small mistake like this, the rule cannot be so stringent. That is why in September 2018, they came up with this circular 64 by 38 of 2018, wherein it specified that for minor clerical errors, where there is no intention to evade tax, in those cases, the penalty should be restricted to 1,000 rupees. And lastly, the 76 by 50 2018 circular provides how to determine owner of the goods and the related processes with regards to the activity of determining the identity as to who will be deemed to be the owner of the goods, so that penalties can be calculated accordingly. The second set of circulars, as we discussed with respect to the officer side of it, these set of circulars are for the taxpayer side of it. So the first circular 38 by 12 2018, this circular provides what are the documents, how and when with respect to job work the e-way bill provisions will apply, and what happens in case where job worker is unregistered or the movement is happening for interstate. So all of that is clarified in that circular. Another press release was issued in April 2018, wherein they specified specifically for bill to ship to transactions, wherein if I am sending the goods to not my customer's premise, but to a third person at the instruction of my customer. So A is ordering, B is supplying, and C is receiving at some other place. So in that case, how the transaction should be reported and how e-way bill should correctly capture this ABC model, that is explained in that press release. Recently in 2021, again another circular was issued with regards to specifically highlighting that in case e-invoice is actually done by the supplier, physical copy need not be carried. Moving ahead, let me highlight some of the judgments that have been issued with respect to this e-way bill provisions. So in case of Satyam Shivam Papers Private Limited, the Supreme Court said that only because of a technical lapse, there cannot be a conclusion that there is intention to evade tax, and penalties under section 129 with respect to detention should not be evoked. So in this case, what had happened was, because of some political agitations, because of some political some activity that was happening, the vehicle was stuck for a couple of days, few days, and the e-way bill expired. And thereafter, when the goods again started to move, it was caught. So this matter went all the way up to Supreme Court and said that in this special case, don't you need not act so strict. There was no intention to evade tax. All the documents are available because of this political agitation, which was out of the control of this truck driver or the recipient or the person who was responsible for that movement of goods. They could not do anything, and for that reason, you cannot invoke penalties under section 129. In case of Hawking cookers, what again the High Court said that if all the other details in the transaction are correct and all the documentation is perfect, then merely because there is some mistake in mentioning the place of supply, that should not warrant action under 129. That should not lead to penalties under section 129. In case of RK Motors, the case was very interesting. The driver was from one state and he did not know the southern Indian languages. He misread some of one direction, and because of which there was a small detour that he had to take. And on that detour, he was caught. And that time the officer was suggested, okay, you have to go to this place. You are not on the right path. That is why I'm going to levy penalty. The Madras court said that only for such small detours, route deviation, again, the penalty provision should not be invoked. Lastly, again, in another case, the Tripura High Court said that for minor clerical errors, inaccuracies in e-way bill, you need not invoke section 129. In case of Perfect Enterprises, the last day, expiry day, was a national holiday, because of which the person who was actually transporting the good, he could not extend the period. In that case, the court said that, see, all the other documents are correct. They could not extend the period. The e-way bill expired because of a national holiday, and hence, because of such special case, penalty under section 129 should not be levied. Now, this is an interesting case, Ram Charitra Ram Haria Prasad. What this guy did was that e-way bill expired, after which the vehicle was caught. He immediately, on receiving this notice, extended the e-way bill period. So what happened was, he renewed the expired e-way bill before the detention order was issued. The government said, since before the order he has extended, you cannot levy penalty. Thereafter, the rules have been changed. Earlier, what the law allowed is that at the time of expiry, 4 hours before and 4 hours after expiry, you can extend. Now that provision is changed to say that 8 hours before the expiry, you can extend it. So now, again, what happened in this case might have triggered or asked them to this would have triggered them to change these provisions, to change it from 4 hours before, 4 hours after the expiry time, to permit the extension, to changing it to 8 hours before. So now, if your expiry has happened, there is no scope to extend the e-way bill further. Last case that I wanted to take is the Ramakrishna Gupta case, wherein the taxpayer or the person who was moving the goods, they forgot to fill the part B of the e-way bill. And luckily, the court said that it is only a minor procedural lapse. Again, 129 penalty should not be invoked. I would strongly suggest that this has happened only in 1 or 2 cases, but in general, there are other decisions of the other high courts which clearly state that part A and part B are mandatory, and they have emphasized that only after part B is generated, e-way bill is complete, and they have upheld the penalties wherever part B is not filled. So please don't rely too much on this Ramakrishna Gupta case. and make sure that all the deliveries, whenever they are taking place, the e-way bill part A, part B, both are completely filled up. And last aspect in this first session, first aspect is that what are the recent updates? So as we all know, if you want to log into the e-way bill website, two-factor authentication has been made mandatory. So not just the password, but also an OTP will go to that authorized person, after which only the login will be permitted. Again, e-way bills has now two sites which are operational, e-way bill 1 and e-way bill 2. Both these websites are interoperable. So what the government has done is, to manage the load, they have established two websites. Whether you generate part A on e-way bill first website, you can still update using the e-way bill 2 website the part B details. Earlier it was restricted that only the e-way bills generated in part 1 in the e-way bill first website, they will be permitted to be amended or cancelled in that same website only. However, now all of that is resolved, they are interoperable. So irrespective on which website the part A or part B or the details are mentioned, the action on the e-way bill can be taken on any of these websites. Again, in sync with the GST returns, they have also again mandated 4 or 6 digit HSN in e-way bills. Also, e-way bill and e-invoice portal, both managed by NIC. So they have come up with this provision wherein same login ID, password, credentials can be used for both these websites. Lastly, they have also started with Android and iOS applications on your mobile devices for e-way bill generation as well. Okay, with this I have completed my first aspect with regards to the basic law which is happening. Now moving on to the second aspect, to discuss the significance the e-way bills in the GST compliances. The first one that I want to take up is, e-way bill is proof of movement, and especially when this e-way bill is accompanying your other documents such as your consignment note, the LR, and as a recipient or a supplier, your goods outward note or goods received note. All of this along with e-way bill are very essential to establish that yes, the movement of goods did actually happen from point A to point B. So yes, e-way bill is mandatory, e-way bill is in some cases enough, but along with your transporter's LR, consignment note, and the document issued by a supplier or recipient when the goods either move out or are received, all of those become very critical to establish that movement actually happened. Okay, so we are seeing a lot of these things coming up wherein some very old records are pulled up 2021 and they are asking that okay, we feel that movement did not happen in this case, or some supplier is caught somewhere and as a recipient they are alleging that you have never received the goods. So in all of these cases, these proofs will be very handy. So please make sure all the movements that take place have all of these documents ready, available along with the invoice. And in some cases, we have started to see that all these documents are digitalized and kept. So that option can also be explored by the organization. Moving ahead from department's perspective, what are they doing with all of this data? So all of this e-way bill generation that is happening, they have so much of data available with them that at a particular point in time, they actually know, they have live data of which goods are moving from which place to which place. They can actually basis the data, track and try to intercept the moment if they feel that there is something wrong. So they are using a lot of digital tools and identifying if there is some tax evasion that is being happening or not. Secondly, recently we saw departments have issued show cause notices that, okay, we are seeing you have generated two e-way bills in the month of November, but there is only one transaction in your GSTR 3B, GSTR 1. We feel you have moved the goods but not paid tax. Please explain. But obviously for 18-19, there could have been cases where there was some error in generating e-way bill. However, as a recipient or as a supplier, you forgot to cancel. Those cases are now cropping up. So please make sure that e-way bill which are final and correct, only those are there on the portal. Rest all e-way bills which are incorrect are deleted or rejected or cancelled ASAP within the time limits. In one specific case, what we saw was the department actually had information with respect to movement of that vehicle on that particular day. I will be taking just 2 minutes here to explain what the department did was. So basically, as a supplier, it was not my responsibility to move the goods from location A to location B. It was recipient's responsibility. However, they requested me that I am sending the vehicle, you please generate the e-way bill and give it to the truck driver to take it forward. In good faith, they did that. They did not know, or they did not care to see whether the goods actually reached the recipient or no. For them, the responsibility had completed once that truck had left their premises. But the recipient, what he did was, he had already given an instruction for that truck driver to go to another location where the goods were either reshuffled and those goods were sent to some other party. Why? Because that recipient did not want the supplier to know that, okay, he is my customer, I want to send the goods to him. And the department came back 3 years later stating that you have prepared this e-way bill with this vehicle number, but when we checked for that particular day, this vehicle did not cross any of the checkpost. There was no tax, the toll deducted from their FASTag. That is when they realized that, okay, it is important that the vehicle which they have generated e-way bill for, that actually goes all the way up to the destination. So here, please note that only if you are responsible for the movement, you are expected to generate the e-way bill. If you are not responsible for the movement, please do not generate the e-way bill on behalf of any other person. And if you are responsible for the movement, please make sure that the vehicle has actually gone from point A to point B and the goods have actually moved. These additional proofs of toll receipts or FASTag deductions, that will also help to prove that movement actually happened. Then they have also started to check whether the invoice that you mentioned in the e-way bill that is there in GSTR 1 and vice versa. All of these details are also available with the department, and with so much of data, they are doing a lot of data mining and data analytics, which will actually crop up 2 years, 3 years later. So hence it is important that right now, when the movement is happening, all of the documents details are correctly and accurately captured in your system. Now, with respect to service industry, it is very important to note that the services are intangible, movement of goods is tangible. So for in rental business or in works contract, what goods are moving or the movement that happens, they hardly are going to match with what the invoice that is raised. In rental business, the good that would have moved will be valued at 1 lakh rupees, but the rental for that good would only be 5,000 for per month. So as a service industry, you must be aware that you must have all of these reconciliations, or there must be a proper SOP in place to make sure that if at all in future this type of query comes, you have answers, you have documentation available with you. Basic, as I explained, the value of the goods that are moving and the value of your service will not be the same, and hence appropriate reconciliation should be available with you in those cases. Last but not the least, the deemed acceptance that we spoke. In this case, please note, as we discussed, if you do not communicate your acceptance or rejection for that particular e-way bill, it will be deemed to be accepted. Now, what are the ramifications or the implications of such deemed acceptance? What if some wrong supplier uploads your GSTN as the recipient of the goods which he is sending, which you are not aware, you have never dealt with that supplier, you don't know who that person is? What if some wrong goods are tagged by the correct supplier to your GSTIN? It could lead to implications which we cannot imagine. Now, it is important to note that the mobile number on which the e-way bill details are, e-way bill updates are received, is generally not the person who is handling logistics. He is generally somebody who is sitting in the office, in the AC cabins, who does not handle logistics, and maybe a finance guy or somebody at the top of that chain. They might receive 20, 30, 50, hundreds of SMSs every day. And as a human tendency, they might actually forget, or they might not be keen to verify each and every moment. Hence, it becomes important that since mobile number may not be permitted to be updated, you can have that feature of sub-user that we discussed. Also, additionally, as an organization, since you have the 72-hour gap every alternate day, there has to be some sanity check of the e-way bill portal, wherein somebody actually checks, okay, these are the active e-way bills. Okay, yes, I know these are the ones I have correctly generated. Okay, these are the ones which my supplier has generated against my GSTIN. Are these correct? Has my communication happened with that supplier that he is sending goods? If all of that in place should be there, and maybe a final reconciliation every week, or maybe twice a month can happen, wherein all of these data is reconciled and kept ready. It is easier said than done also, but at the same time, doing this exercise at the end of the year might be too much cumbersome as compared to doing it weekly or monthly. Hence, this concept of deemed acceptance might not seem such a big deal, but when you actually think about it, if something wrong happens or some wrong HSN is shown as being delivered to you, what stops the government to come and check your premises? Okay, we have seen on the e-way bill portal, this HSN is delivered. We are not here. We cannot see that item here in your godown or your warehouse. Will they then, what steps they can take? We can't say, we don't know. Hence, please make sure e-way bill, though a smaller compliance, please make sure it is properly complied with. All the documents are always aligned with the nature of movement that is happening. And please make sure that you are generating e-way bill only in cases where you are responsible for the movement and not in any other cases. With that, I would end today's session. Thank you, everyone. I'll just go through if there are any comments or any queries that have been raised. So one of the queries, if we have sea transportation from mother vessel to port, is e-way bill applicable one port to another port? So, as I said, that in many cases, yes, e-way bill is required, but obviously with respect to mother vessel and the smaller vessel from happening from mother vessel to port, uh, then e-way bill will be applicable. So see, there will, wherever sea transportation is involved, there will be some leg of the movement that will happen via road. So in case of an import transaction, you need not generate e-way bill till the time your goods have been actually cleared. Once they are cleared and ready for taking it to your premise, in those cases you are required to generate e-way bill. Here the query also talks about transportation from one port to another port. Again, my same question would be that yes, for C, they have given the provision, but primarily there will be some movement which will happen via road also. So that should be integrated in the entire e-way bill that is generated. Again, one of our Shyamji have mentioned that regarding bill to ship to transactions in South region, we are facing a lot of issues. Yes, so we are aware, and the lesser we speak, the better. But the fact that it remains that yes, when you're actually the goods are intercepted, some of the officers do act authoritarian. They do not listen to you, even if everything is right. They will not listen to your whatever understanding of the law or the transaction is. But make sure, matlab, I would suggest that as long as your documentation is correct, you might face small hurdles at the lower level, but at the appellate level, the relief will obviously be granted as long as all the documentation is in check. Yes, there can be issues regarding blocking of your cash flows. Some funds will be blocked, but as long as your transaction is correctly reported, the transaction specifically where you have correctly mentioned the details, where is the billing happening, where is the goods being delivered, as long as these details as shown in the invoice are in sync with the e-way bill, I think there should not be any problem. So there is another query which says, can we generate e-way bill on challan and same detail of challan to be used in invoice on later date? So again here, if we see, the rules provide that for goods, the invoice should be generated the moment they leave your factory. So moving the goods on challan and generating invoice later might not be conducive. I would suggest that when the movement is happening, if that movement is for a supply, for a taxable supply, then it should move with invoice only and not a challan. Um, Thank you, everyone. We've exhausted the queries also. I may have taken additional 10-15 minutes also. Thank you. Thank you very much for the patient hearing. I hope we've been able to uncomplicate this aspect of e-way bill as well as for you. See you all again next month, again with another session that we'll plan. Thank you very much once again, and happy Navratri and the festivities that are about to come with Dashera and Diwali. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.